Let's talk about your TEDx because here's where lessons can be learned. Bridges out of the past. Okay, so that's you talking about a survivor's lesson on resilience. One thing that you hit on at the very start, but then drifted away from a little bit, was this idea of nature versus nurture. Tell us a little bit about that.
I think that most people fall into one of two ideas in terms of how we are shaped. Either it's nature, which means your genetics influence you, it's your grandparents' fault, good or bad, because it's in my genetics, it's just that's just how I'm wired, can't do anything about it, versus nurture, which is the thought that says, you know what, your environment is what really shapes and determines you. So in other words, it's your parents' fault, right? But
Right.
but really, when it comes down to it, absolutely both nature and nurture influence us, but neither one of them determine us because at the end of the day, as human beings, we have the freedom of choice, right? Things happen to us, and every single one of us have the freedom and the ability to choose how we respond when something happens. And that's incredibly empowering because that means when something happens, we get to stop it for a moment and just choose what's the best response? What's the response that's going to serve me best? Which one's going to increase my influence from a leadership perspective? Now, that's easier said than done. It's kind of like New Year's
Right, right.
resolutions.
Yeah,
But
ask you about that.
we all can do it. We all because we all get it right sometimes. We make the right choices. And then sometimes I know I'm not the only one who's said or done something in the emotion of a moment and later
Hmm.
thought,
Hmm.
ooh, shouldn't have said that, shouldn't have done that. The thing is that we are emotional creatures, right? We're human, we have emotions. But it's Andy Stanley who reminds us our feelings can be terrible leaders.
Wait a minute. So every now and then we get to, I don't like the term tweetable moments, but we get to the term writable moments. Whereas you should be grabbing a piece of paper and pencil and writing that down. Say that again for us.
We are human beings, right? We have
Hmm.
emotions. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
When things happen, particularly things that we don't like, we have get feelings that come up, emotions bubble to the surface. But every single one of us have the power to choose how we respond. And it's Andy Stanley who says those feelings can be terrible leaders.
Feelings can be terrible leaders. Oh, wow. And so that actually goes to your statement the power to respond proactively is necessary. What did you mean by that? Is that what you meant to say, okay, if you're leading by your feelings, you're not
Mm.
responding proactively? What did you mean there?
Absolutely. To me, to understand what responding proactively means, you have to understand what responding reactively means, right? And back to those feelings. Sometimes think of this. Maybe you've had a long day, a stressful day at work or something like that, and you come home and just all of the stress and the energy of the day are there. And so someone forgot to take out the trash. And so suddenly your emotions just boil up to the surface and you start yelling at somebody, right? Maybe you lose your temper, snap, if you will. And then later you have to apologize to that person because you're like, you know what? I didn't really mean it. I was just taking out the stress of the day, the emotion of the day. I had a tough time at work kind of thing. But I took it out based on those feelings. I responded based on the feelings and reacted based on responding proactively based on principles and values. Right? I didn't really
Mm.
want to rupture a relationship because somebody forgot to take out the trash. And yet we all have gotten it wrong from time to time, and yet we
Yeah.
have all gotten it right from time to time as well. And so learning to just not ignore those feelings, but learning that we don't have to respond based on them starts meaning that we can make choices intentionally rather than from our head, and making choices intentionally from our head rather than from our heart or the emotions or the habits that sometimes don't serve us well.
You know,